Let me show you why the rate of return on real estate equity is always the same. Let's say that we're filling out our statement of net worth and we're listing our assets and our liabilities. Let's say this goblet represents a piece of property, maybe even your house, and it's worth $100,000. So you list this as an asset, a $100,000 asset. Let's say you have also $100,000 of liquid cash sitting in a bank or a credit union or an insurance company. What do you list that as? Another asset. So you have $200,000 in assets. Now, it may be true that you might have a $100,000 mortgage liability for a net worth of $100,000 day one. But day two forward, it's much greater if you keep them separated. What happens if you pay 20% in a down payment, or you take the equity from your former property and put it into a new property and a bigger down payment because you thought lower mortgages meant lower costs because you didn't understand opportunity cost? What happens if you pay cash or you pay off your property? What did you just do to your assets? You just took one $100,000 asset, the property, and another $100,000 asset, your cash, and you just combined them together into one $100,000 asset. You just cut them in half in this example. So what happens if you separate 80%? Or like what I do, 100% of my real estate equity? What did I just do to my assets? I just increased them by as much as double. Now let's say this property appreciates this year by 5%. What is this worth at the end of the year? $105,000. Well, let's increase the rate of return by paying it off. So we pour all of our cash into the property and now it goes up 5%. Now what is it worth? $105,000. How come the same answer? Because the rate of return on real estate equity is always the same. Zip, zero, nada. Whether this goes up in value, down in value, full of cash, empty of cash, doesn't make any difference. If I separate my equity, I give it the ability to earn a rate of return. Let's say this earns 10% this year, which is what I've averaged the last 6 years. What is this worth at the end of the year? $110,000. Wait a minute, I made 10 grand here and 5 grand here for a total of 15,000. How much more is 15,000 than 5,000 with the house paid off? That's 3 times as much. That's 300%. But there's a mortgage there, right? Is that good or bad? That's good. That's what banks do. They pay interest to make more interest. Let's say you borrowed that money at 6%. That's $6,000. 15,000 minus 6,000 is a net of 9,000. 9,000 is 80% more money than 5. Let's say you borrowed on a non-owner occupied income real estate property, a duplex, at 7.5%. 7.5% tax deductible interest is only 5% in a 33% bracket. I made 15,000 minus 5,000 is a net of 10. How much more is 10 than 5? 100%. What would you rather have? 1 horse working for you or 2 horses working for you? Can you have 2 horses working for you even if you owe money on one of the horses? Yes. How many of you would hire an employee for 50 grand if that employee made you an extra 150,000? Let's say the property goes down in value. If your equity's in that property and you lose 10%, you will lose 10 grand. But if you keep it separated, you will not lose even if your property goes down. And Will Rogers once said, people get more concerned about the return of their money instead of the return on their money when things get bad.